2042 has released Update 3, and I've recorded this commentary a couple of times and chopped and changed it, down to the fact that I don't really know how to feel about Update 3. Now, if you're somebody who is playing Battlefield 2042 and already owns the game, Update 3 is great. It solves a lot of problems, it introduces some new modes such as Rush in 2042, and creates a better game environment, especially with quality of life improvements, HUD changes, UI changes, and I'm impressed that they're managing to get updates out so quickly. However, it doesn't detract from the fact that Battlefield 2042 obviously released before it should have been, and that this update only really remedies issues that many of us expected not to exist in the first place. So if you're expecting the immediate redemption of 2042 within Update 3, that's not the case, but it is a step in the road in improving the situation in 2042, and although these are issues that should have been resolved, I do have a lot of respect for these updates coming out thick and fast and achieving a lot in a short space of time. Now, the patch notes for this are quite extensive, and most of it is effectively fixes for the game, including general fixes, UI fixes, matchmaking fixes, progression fixes, rendering fixes, map fixes, and fixes individually for Hazard Zone, Portal, and a few other bits and pieces here and there. This is effectively a smoothing update. It takes a lot of the jank from the game, a lot of issues with rendering, a lot of issues that shouldn't really exist that just manage to make their way into the launch, and smooths over it. And there are some critical changes as well, and some critical additions to the game that we'll talk about. Most notably, this update solves a few issues. The first one is the fact that the UI now has the addition of being able to see medics around you and being able to understand what pieces of equipment friendlies have in order to help heal or give you ammo. This is a really nice UI change, and the UI generally is now more scalable, and the HUD experience just feels a little bit better. There are less, giant glowing objectives in your face that now scale over distance, and it just looks and runs smoother. Whilst I'd like to see more HUD and UI improvements, there's definitely a smoother system here. You can see better transitions, you can see less jank, and it feels a bit more like a polished product. Even the intro sequence with the FOV bug has been solved, and the actual intro sequences themselves look less janky. The next major fix is allegedly over 150 individual fixes, changes, and improvements across all of the maps, including geometry, rendering issues, lighting issues, and issues in terms of collision meshes. So if you've noticed issues where your tank is crashing into an invisible object, or if you're noticing issues where something's flickering or something isn't working as intended, chances are it was fixed in this update, and lots has been done in that sense of the game. The most major fix, in my opinion, is the improvement to the vehicle situation in 2042. The issue where missiles were reacquiring targets and relocking back on to players after they'd already fired their countermeasures has appeared to have been solved, and the armor grenade or anti-armor grenade that Sundance possesses no longer can reacquire targets and spins around in a circle. The same applies to missiles as well. Sometimes you'd flare off a missile and it would spin in a circle, and somehow it would still hit your helicopter. The NTW-50 has also had its effectiveness reduced, meaning that tanking, generally speaking, and the situation in aerial vehicles is now much better, much more reliable, and seems to work a lot better as well. Allegedly, there's also been a massive improvement in audio in some places, and I did actually hear somebody wingsuit behind me for once, which isn't something that I've experienced in 2042, so hopefully we'll continue to see a plethora of updates and improvements to audio, the general balancing situation, and the in-game situation as a whole. This is why I called it the smoothing update. If you go through this patch list, there's literally patches for everything. There's fixes for rendering, there's fixes for Hazard Zone, there's fixes for Battlefield Portal. Everything that was kind of broken has been hopefully improved or fixed in places, but the most major one primarily being the fixes to anti-aircraft measures, countermeasures, and seemingly some audio tweaks as well. And if you're somebody who's going to play 2042, this is a really good update in terms of improving some balancing issues and improving some notable issues within the game. The only thing that I'm sad that is missing is that we haven't seen any changes to the bolt in the game, which is obviously very overpowered at this point in time, and that's something I would have liked to have seen early on here. We also aren't seeing any changes to the layout of Breakthrough, which means there still are objectives up on rooftops, meaning that mode is pretty much chalked if you manage to play on Kaleidoscope or Orbital. So those are two critical changes that I really would have liked to have seen in this update, but haven't made it in. Now in terms of additions, there have been some added templates to Battlefield Portal, including Rush mode and another limited time mode as well as allegedly weekly missions appearing in the game, which is a nice addition to see for longevity. Now templates have been added for various different types of TDM, various different types of Gunmaster mode, an infection template, a vehicle deathmatch template, but most importantly, Rush is now in Battlefield 2042, and it's an official playlist as well in Battlefield Portal, meaning you'll get all the XP that you could possibly want. You can now officially play Rush in 2042, and honestly, it's a lot of fun. Rush in 2042 with 64 players seems to play a lot better than pretty much any of the 128 player experiences. And I think this affirms to me pretty straightforwardly that Battlefield 2042 doesn't need to rely on 128 players. The footage you're seeing in the background today is of that Rush gameplay, and I had a lot of fun with it. It was a little bit quiet in places due to the 64 players, but it felt more tactical, it felt more engaging, and it felt less chaotic. And I hopefully think we will see them play around with more player counts in different modes, and I'd actually like to see a reduction in the number of players on breakthrough mode, trying something like 100 players or 80 players to reduce the amount of spam in that game mode and actually make the gunfights feel more meaningful. At the moment, breakthrough just feels messy. Because there are less players on this mode and less CPU drain and less CPU utilization effectively, you'll notice that performance across the board is definitely better in the Rush game mode as well, and I was getting consistently more higher frame rates than I was in Breakthrough or Conquest at 128 players. So Rush is a big win, and it's something that I actually really enjoyed playing, and that's not something I've been able to say very frequently about 2042 and get past certain degrees of frustration. Now, one thing that's also been added is a creator limited time mode. Most of you guys will know Stod, play with him all the time, and he now has his official limited time mode in Battlefield 2042 called Snipers and Knives. And this is a pretty cool one in the chamber style mode featuring sniper rifles that's actually a lot of fun as a limited time mode, so something a little bit further afield if that's something you're interested in. And that's about it for Update 3, and it's a great addition and it definitely fixes a lot of problems. But it just doesn't feel like enough. And I think it's kind of difficult saying that because obviously lots of people are working very hard to get these updates out quickly. But it just feels as though these are issues that shouldn't have existed in the game at launch, or shouldn't have existed when the game was released generally. And it feels very difficult to appreciate these updates for what they are, considering a lot of it is just smoothing over problems that many of us expected to not be there in the first place. I really want to like Update 3, and I really want to like what it means and what it attests to in terms of frequent updates, solving issues quickly, and balancing things and smoothing out things, but it's difficult to do that when it's ultimately balancing and smoothing out things that shouldn't have really been broken in the first place. If you own Battlefield 2042 and you're having fun with it, this will definitely reduce the frustration in the game and improve the experience overall. But really, I don't know if it's enough at the moment, and I think we need more and more of these updates to get 2042 in a better place, and I think that's the intention here. Update 3 really just symbolizes one update in a long road of updates to make 2042 a better game, a less frustrating experience, and make it more fun. And I think that's something that is commendable, but also not something that necessarily should be celebrated, because this is something that should have been delayed, and a game that should have come out in March instead of when it came out. The next major concern is that Battlefield is going into a winter break, and I definitely support that. You know, it doesn't matter if you're a developer or who you are, everybody deserves a break over Christmas, although it tends to be that game development can see quite a long break over this period, and we may not see Season 1 or significant updates to 2042 again until February or March, so we need to see a few more changes between now and Christmas in order for the game to be at least a semi-enjoyable experience all the way through. I would definitely like to see significant changes to Breakthrough and the Bolt before this game goes into the winter period. There is a concern here, of course, that Battlefield 2042 is going to kind of zombie its way through winter, meaning that it could lose a lot of players and a lot of interest very quickly, considering the core experience is very frustrating, and that's yet to be seen. So folks, thank you again for watching this video. I'm on the road to 100k subscribers, so feel free to drop a like, leave a subscribe, and I'll catch you again in the next 2042 video. We'll be covering Rush, and we'll be covering some of the new limited time modes, so I'll see you there.